Today we are making soft pretzels. I made some for my family yesterday. We ate it with our spaghetti dinner, and I made the big mistake of only making one batch, which is 8 pretzels, and that's only two per person when you have a family of four. So today we will make one batch, but I recommend that you make two or three. Here we go.
For this recipe, you will need 2½ cups all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon sugar, and 2¼ teaspoons of yeast. That's the same as 1 packet. You may use active dry yeast or rapid rise yeast. Mix the dry ingredients together thoroughly before adding 1 cup of very warm water. Mix the dry and liquid ingredients together until they form a stiff, shaggy dough. Be sure to scrape the sides of your bowl frequently to incorporate all of the flour. Use a knife or scraper to clear the sticky dough from your spoon. Then turn the dough out onto a clean surface.
So to knead this shaggy mess, I'm going to lift the front of it gently with the pads of my hands, fold it towards me, and then push away with the heels of my hands with this part. Then I'm going to turn it a quarter turn, fold it, and push away. Turn, fold, and push. Turn, fold, and push. And I'm doing this gently at first because this is a very soft dough and I don't want it to stick to me too much, which it is right now. So at first you treat it really gently and use your bench scraper or any kind of flat spatula that you might have just to scrape up what's sticking to the board and then continue kneading. After a while, after a few minutes, it'll stop being so sticky. And you really want to resist the urge to add flour because that'll make your dough dry and we want it to stay soft. It just takes time for all of the moisture to be absorbed into the flour, and it takes time for the gluten to develop. If you remember from other lessons, gluten is the stretchy protein in flour that causes dough to be chewy when we bake it. This is really sticky now, really sticky. I'm going to keep kneading it and see what happens if I don't put any more flour on the board. I am so tempted right now. I'm going to add a tiny bit. I can't stand it. Do not dip your hands into your flour container. Use a little spoon just to lightly dust. And I'm going to leave a little extra flour on my bench there that I can incorporate in as I need it. I'm going to lift this up, spread the flour, dump it down, and keep kneading. We have to do this for 5 to 8 minutes or until the dough becomes very soft but very smooth. It should feel like the best brand new Play-Doh you have ever had. Before you start playing with it, when you very first take it out of the can and it's super soft, that's what you want your pretzel dough to feel like. So I just keep putting a tiny little light coating, dusting of flour on my bench, which is really just my kitchen table. I'm going to keep doing that fold and push, turn, fold and push, turn, fold and push. And as it sticks, I just take a little more flour, keep working it. What we're doing is building the strength of the gluten proteins in this dough. Gluten is going to do a couple of things. One, it's going to act like a strong net or like a balloon. And when the air, the carbon dioxide gas in this dough starts to rise, it's going to trap it. And that's what makes bread rise, is the gluten trapping those air bubbles like that. But the other thing it's going to do is provide a satisfying chew to our bread when we bite into it. We don't want this to melt in our mouth. We want this to be a little chewy. And for that, we need that gluten. Okay, I've reached the one-handed kneading stage where I can just gently push that dough with the heel of my hand across my body and then roll it back. This is a great cross-body workout. And it's a great change up when you get tired of that folding and pushing and turning action. Oh, this is starting to feel much more like super high quality Play-Doh. Guys, I'm gonna call it good. This is not a finicky recipe. You just need a nice soft dough that's not going to stick anymore. And then the next step is simply to just put a tiny bit of oil. This is to keep it from sticking and developing a skin on top while it rests. That's oiled. I'm gonna lay a little towel over it, and I'm gonna let it sit for half an hour, and I'll see you when it's ready. Okay, bakers, while my dough is resting and those yeast are busy eating, I have prepared what is called a baking soda bath. In a medium-sized pot, I have 6 cups of water and 3 tablespoons of baking soda. And you want to make sure that you mix that up really well and that you have space, about that much space at the top of your pot. Don't fill it all the way to the top, because what we're going to do with this is heat it to boiling, drop our pretzels in it before we bake them, and it's going to need room to bubble up and to splatter everywhere. So leave yourself a little space at the top. Now, the important thing about baking soda is that it helps give pretzels that signature dark browning that we associate with pretzels. Now, professional pretzel makers use something called lye, which is dangerous to work with. It's very tricky to use at home, but home bakers can just use baking soda. The trick is not using too high a concentration of baking soda. A lot of recipes would call for a 1/4 cup or up to 6 tablespoons of baking soda with your 6 cups of water. And I did not like the baking soda aftertaste that I got, so I decreased the amount of baking soda that most recipes call for. So I'm going to go put this on the stove and wait until we've shaped our pretzels, and then I'll heat it up to boiling, and it'll be ready to go. It is time to start shaping our dough into pretzels. So for this next part, you are going to need something to cut your dough with. It can be a bench scraper or just a regular old butter knife. You're going to need some spray oil because this is some sticky stuff. And you are going to need 2 or 3 baking sheets. If you have parchment paper, ooh, that would be a bonus. I am here with Bear. You might know him from whole wheat hearth bread. Our dough has now doubled in size. It is big and fluffy and wonderful. All that carbon dioxide gas is built up in there. So it's time to start shaping it into pretzels. Now, Bear and I have never done this together before. Bear, have you done pretzels before?
Nope.
Nope. Oh, good. Okay, cool. So there's a little bit of oil on this. So we're just going to simply turn it out onto our bench here. And this makes 4 pretzels. So we want to take our bench scraper or knife, whichever you're using, it doesn't matter. What's important though is that we don't rip the gluten that we have taken all this time to build up. It's like, it would be like ripping a muscle in your body.
Ow.
There, exactly. Hard to repair. So we are going to cut this into 8 pieces. So there's 2. Then I cut it in half again, and then each one of these gets cut in half again, roughly, doesn't matter. All right, so let me show you how we shape these, and then you can give it a try. So we're going to take your eighth and just kind of roll it. We're kind of gently getting the air out of it, and then you start gently rolling back and forth. And the idea is use your hands to very gently push and roll, and then you kind of spread them out as you go along the, and every once in a while I pick it up and kind of smack it. So what we're doing is making a snake, just like you did when you were a kid, make this out of Play-Doh or whatever. If your rope stops rolling, you're pressing too hard. So you don't want to be pushing so that it does that. Slides, you want it to always be rolling. And you want it to be about 24 inches, 2 feet long. Okay, so, and I just guess without it ripping. If it looks like it's about to rip, stop and shape it. Okay, here's how you shape a pretzel. You have a nice little ta-da. Then we're gonna lift it up by the tail and set it onto our pan for later. Want to give it a try?
All right.
All right, here goes Bear. Press, good. Press that air out gently.
Nice.
And I think the biggest struggle we have when we do this with kids in the classroom is pressing too hard so that the dough is being pushed instead of rolled, and also not working quickly enough, like over touching the dough. You want to just work as quickly as you can and without touching it too much, because it gets warm, then it becomes sticky, and then it's really hard to work with. That looks beautiful. And every once in a while, if you want, you can pick it up from the ends and kind of slap it down. I don't know what that does, but for some reason it helps me. Maybe it's just fun to do. I don't know. Yeah, nice. Okay. And transfer it. I'm going to put this here so people can see what we're doing. When you pick it up by its little tail and put it, this is a greased cookie sheet. And we're just setting them here so that we can take them over to our stove later. All right. Want to do another one?
Sure.
Okay. Now we're going to take it on over to the stove, give it a hot bath, stick her in the oven. There, and I have our tray of pretzels ready to go. The baking soda bath is boiling like crazy, and we have this baking sheet here that has been very liberally greased with cooking spray. These things are super sticky and they'll never come off your tray if you don't liberally grease it or lay parchment paper down and grease the parchment paper. So what we need to do is give each of these pretzels a 30-second bath. So I'm going to carefully lift up one pretzel by its little tail, and you're going to just slowly lower it into the boiling water. And then I set a timer for 1 minute. And when it says 30 seconds, then it's done. I hope you guys can see this floating around in there. What's happening is two things. One, the dough is gelatinizing now because it's in this hot water, and that's going to make the pretzel super chewy. And the other thing that's happening is the baking soda is coating this pretzel so that when it bakes, it will turn nice and brown. That's what baking soda does. It helps things brown. So it's been 30 seconds. We're going to carefully lift this out with a slotted spatula. And I'm going to kind of shake off the excess water, set it onto the baking sheet, and Bear's going to give it a little sprinkle. And I'm going to try this again. You always want to make sure your water is boiling. If it ever stops boiling, Give it a second to get back up to boil again, because the temperature drops as soon as you put things in it. Timer. We'll let it swim around in there for 30 seconds. You could leave it a little longer, but any shorter and you don't get enough chew and you don't get enough baking soda bath, any too much longer, it's just fall apart. So this is kind of important.
They're getting very puffy in there. Looks
Yes,
great.
you can tell. Okay, good. Yes, they are really puffing up, which means they don't fit. You can't fit 8 on a tray usually after it goes in the water. So remember, for safety, you're going to lower it in, and then right when it gets towards the surface, that's when you let go. What's going to happen if you let go from up here? Exactly. And hot baking soda bath hurts like crazy, I can tell you from experience. So. Okay, now, folks, if you are going to put cinnamon and sugar on these, you do not want to salt them. You just want to boil them, set them on your tray, and we'll cinnamon and sugar them once they come out. So.
Yes.
Please don't go. Rip it open. Oh my God, can you hear that?
That is some pressure.
You got exactly the right amount of salt. Oh my God, you're so good. You guys have to make these. They were easy, weren't they?
They were, and they're delicious.
Oh my
Pick a
God,
side.
they're fluffy. You have the whole thing. I'm gonna eat a whole one on myself. You're gonna love this. Thanks for watching. There. Bye. I'm pretty sure this is the only thing you're ever gonna have to make. I think you can live off this forever.